Alright guys, Gemini. Welcome back to another Gemini 888 video. And in today's video I'm going to be speaking on, it's an event that took place in early December 1991 in San Antonio, Texas. Some of you are going to be familiar with this one. Some of you might have not seen this one. Kind of triggered towards the old school fans, but this event was the Tuesday in Texas. And it was awesome. This is always one of my favorite events when I'm with a group of guys and we're talking wrestling. One of the first things we always bring up is, hey Jim, do you remember Tuesday in Texas? And I'm like, hell yeah, I remember Tuesday in Texas. This event took place just days after Survivor Series 91. And if you remember at Survivor Series 91, Undertaker had just defeated Hulk Hogan for the WWF title. 6 days later, they did Tuesday in Texas in San Antonio at the Freeman Coliseum. And the main event was the world champion Undertaker versus Hulk Hogan for the belt. Hulk Hogan wound up defeating him, throwing the ashes from Paul Bearer's urn in Taker's eyes. And Jack Tunney was out there, and Jack Tunney got knocked out in the match. They didn't like it. Jack Tunney didn't like the way it went down. And then, finally my cat's scratching on his pad. And then they eventually they forfeit the belt, and Flair goes on to win it in the Rumble, and the rest is history. But yeah, it was Tuesday in Texas was a fantastic event. I mean, this was like Bret Hart starting to get really, really good, and you can tell he was getting good. He wrestled Skinner that day, Steve Keirn. I mean, it was fantastic. I mean, Steve Keirn was, an average wrestler, but Bret really exemplified what 1992 would become to him, becoming the world champion in October of 92, defeating Ric Flair in Saskatoon, Canada, for the WWF belt for the first time. And Bret Hart went on to huge success. But you can see the beginning stages of 92 with Bret Hart wrestling Skinner Tuesday in Texas in late 91. Rowdy Piper had WrestleMania 8 in the Hoosier Dome. And it was just building and building and building. And Bret Hart eventually was main eventing SummerSlam with the Bulldog in August of 92. And December 91, Tuesday in Texas, Bret was just beginning his descent. And it was awesome to see. You could see how good he was in that match versus Skinner. Bulldog versus the Warlord, same thing, Bulldog versus the Warlord, and they wrestled a good match. And the Tuesday in Texas is on the WWE Network. I highly recommend you check it out if you haven't seen it in a while. It's a fantastic event. But the match of all matches, I mean, Hogan, Undertaker, yeah, Hogan won the belt for the 4th time. Bulldog and Warlord, great match, right? Bret Hart Skinner was good, but the match of all matches on the Tuesday in Texas was the rematch between the Macho Man and Jake the Snake Roberts. Now, if you remember, they had a blood feud, and when I say blood feud, back then it pretty much meant like pro wrestling wasn't big enough for both wrestlers. It wasn't, and Jake the Snake and the Macho Man just portrayed this storyline where legit you thought the two men hated each other. You did, and that's where wrestling was at back in the day for the fans. Maybe I was young and didn't understand what they were doing, but back then, you really thought that Jake the Snake and Macho Man were going to kill each other. And you had no doubt that they really hated each other in real life, and that's what you thought. And I mean, in this match, Macho wins the match, but then Jake gets a hold of him, and, Jake gives him like 3-4 DDTs, puts him down, and Macho's knocked out. And then all of a sudden you see Jake grab Miss Elizabeth by the hair. He has Miss Elizabeth, and Macho Man's like tied up in the corner. All of a sudden you see Jake the Snake just go boom, and he slaps the Miss Elizabeth right in the face, and the crowd there is just, nobody could believe that Jake the Snake peppered Miss Elizabeth. And it just, Macho cut this insane promo when the match was over. He's ripping his shirt off, and I mean, it was intense, man. I mean, that's what for me is lacking in pro wrestling today, is the emotion that was invested in, say, an event like Tuesday in Texas. But yeah, we'll wrap this video up. Well, my recommendation for the WWE Network for you guys is to check out the Tuesday in Texas. This Tuesday in Texas, excuse me. If you haven't seen it in a while, it's old school. It's not like what you guys see today, but man, if you want to see just some pure guts and emotion and just wrestlers who you really think hated each other. Check out Jake versus the Macho Man. It's pretty awesome. If you guys started watching WWE last couple of years, it's a great event. That was for me. WWF in '91 started going dark, but man, it was fun to watch. For me, '91 was one of the most funnest years in the WWF. Tuesday in Texas, awesome stuff. Gemini, thank you for listening, guys.